"You can have my bread," said the human boy. What the alien chief did next stunned everyone. The caravan creaked along the dusty road, its wooden wheels protesting with each rotation. Inside one of the cages, 14-year-old Tristan huddled among a dozen alien orphans. His light hair was matted with dirt, his green eyes the only clean thing about him as they stared out at the trading plaza they were approaching. The alien monastery, their final destination, was still days away, but the caravan had stopped to resupply. Tristan's stomach growled. He looked down at the small piece of bread in his hands. His entire day's ration. The alien guards had been particularly stingy today, preparing the children for the harsh life of labor that awaited them. "Human filth," hissed one of the alien orphans next to him, a Krillian with mottled orange skin. "Your kind doesn't belong here." Tristan didn't respond. He'd learned that silence was often the best defense. The caravan jolted to a halt at the edge of the trading plaza, and the guards began their inspection routine. "Out! Line up!" barked the lead guard, a burly Vexian with 4 arms and a permanent scowl etched into his leathery face. The children scrambled out and formed a ragged line. Tristan stood tall despite his exhaustion, refusing to show weakness. The trading plaza buzzed with activity, merchants hawking wares, travelers haggling over prices, locals going about their business. None spared more than a passing glance at the orphans. Such sights were common in the outer colonies. That's when Tristan noticed him. A figure standing apart from the crowd, a humanoid alien clad in dark gray battle-worn armor, fresh scarring evident from recent combat. A hood of coarse brown fabric concealed most of his face, but piercing blue eyes surveyed the scene with calculated interest. The alien's gaze settled on Tristan, and something passed between them. A moment of recognition, though they'd never met. The hooded figure took a step forward, and the crowd parted instinctively. Even the caravan guards tensed. Without thinking, Tristan broke formation. He heard the sharp intake of breath from the other orphans, felt the guard's eyes boring into his back. But he kept walking. He stopped before the armored alien and held out his small piece of bread. "Take my bread," Tristan said simply, his voice steady despite the trembling in his legs. The plaza fell silent. The hooded alien stared at the offering, then at the human boy. Those blue eyes widened slightly, the only indication of surprise. "Do you know who I am, human child?" The voice was deep, resonant, carrying authority that seemed to vibrate through the air. Tristan shook his head. "No, but you look hungry." A sound that might have been a laugh escaped the alien. "I command fleets that could burn this colony to ash. I have dined at tables laden with delicacies from 100 worlds, and you offer me this?" "It's all I have," Tristan replied. The alien's hand emerged from beneath his cloak, 4-fingered, with skin the color of burnished copper. He took the bread, studying it as if it were some rare artifact. "What is your name, boy?" "Tristan." "Tristan," the alien repeated as if tasting the word. "I am Chief Ronik Vordath of the Keldari dynasty." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Even Tristan recognized that name. The Keldari were legendary warriors, rulers of a vast interstellar empire until their recent fall from power. Rumors spoke of assassination attempts, civil war, leaders in hiding. The guard rushed forward. "My lord, forgive the boy's impertinence. He will be punished." "Silence." Ronik didn't raise his voice, but the guard froze mid-sentence. "How much for the boy?" "Sir?" "Name your price for this human child." The guard stammered. "He's bound for the monastery labor program." "The contract is already..." Ronik reached into his cloak and produced a small crystal that glowed with inner light. "Will this suffice to break the contract?" The guard's eyes widened. He took the crystal with trembling hands. "Yes, my lord. More than sufficient." Ronik turned to Tristan. "You offered me bread when you had nothing. I offer you freedom when you had no hope. Will you come with me, Tristan of Earth?" Tristan looked back at the caravan, at the other orphans watching with jealousy and disbelief at the life of servitude that awaited them. Then he looked at the imposing alien chief. "Yes," he said. As they walked away from the plaza, Ronik broke the piece of bread in half and returned a portion to Tristan. "Eat," he commanded. "Where we're going, you'll need your strength." Tristan accepted the bread, wondering what twist of fate had led him to this moment. He didn't know then that his simple act of kindness had not only changed his own destiny, but would eventually alter the course of galactic history. The journey to Ronek's estate took 3 days through terrain that shifted from dusty plains to dense phosphorescent forests, unlike anything Tristan had seen on Earth. They traveled in a sleek transport vessel that hummed rather than roared, its interior a stark contrast to the filthy caravan that had been Tristan's home for weeks. "Your world was destroyed in the Centaurian conflict, correct?" Ronek asked on the final day of their journey. It was the first personal question he'd directed at Tristan. "Yes," Tristan replied, his fingers unconsciously tightening around the armrest. "I was 7 when the evacuation ships came. My parents didn't make it." Ronek nodded, his blue eyes thoughtful. "Humans are remarkably resilient. Most species would have surrendered after losing their homeworld." "We're stubborn that way," Tristan said with a hint of pride. The transport crested a hill, revealing a sprawling estate nestled in a valley of iridescent vegetation. The main structure was an elegant blend of organic curves and sharp angles, its surfaces gleaming with a pearlescent sheen that caught the light of the system's amber sun. "Welcome to my temporary home," Ronek said, a note of irony in his deep voice. "Not quite the Imperial Palace on Caldaria Prime, but it serves its purpose." As they descended toward a landing pad, Tristan noticed figures gathering. Household staff, he assumed, coming to greet their master. The transport settled with a gentle hiss, and the hatch slid open. Ronek stepped out first, his posture straightening, once again every inch the commanding chief. Tristan followed, suddenly conscious of his ragged appearance among such splendor. A line of Caldari attendants bowed deeply. At their head stood a stern-faced male with elaborate facial markings that extended from his temples to his jaw. "Chief Vordath," he said, his voice clipped. "We did not expect your return so soon." "Plans change, Marak," Ronek replied. "This is Tristan of Earth. He will be staying with us." Marak's eyes, a paler blue than Ranek's, flicked to Tristan, narrowing slightly. "A human child? Is this wise, given our circumstances? Are you questioning my judgment?" Ronek's tone remained even, but there was steel beneath it. Marak bowed again, lower this time. "Never, my chief. I merely consider security implications." "The boy stays. See that he's given proper quarters, clothing, and nourishment." Ronek turned to Tristan. "Marak is my senior advisor and security chief. You'll find him efficient, if somewhat lacking in warmth." Marak's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Come," Ronek continued. "There's someone I want you to meet." They proceeded into the main building, passing through corridors adorned with what appeared to be historical artifacts and artwork. Tristan struggled to take it all in. The alien architecture, the subtle fragrance in the air, the soft lighting that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. "My household is divided on your presence," Ronek said quietly as they walked. "Some, like Marak, see only risk. Others are curious. Few have encountered humans before." "Why did you bring me here?" Tristan asked, the question that had been burning in his mind for days. Ronek paused, considering. "In my culture, there is a belief that acts of pure generosity are messages from the ancestors. Your offering of bread. It reminded me of something I had forgotten." Before Tristan could ask what that meant, they arrived at an arched doorway that opened onto a garden courtyard. In its center, a female Caldari sat on a curved bench, reading from a holographic display. She looked up as they entered. Tristan's breath caught. She was unlike any alien he'd encountered. Delicate, yet somehow regal, with soft sky-blue skin and silvery white hair that cascaded to her shoulders. Her eyes were a striking violet that seemed to capture the light. She wore a flowing light dress embroidered with intricate patterns that shifted subtly as she moved. "Father," she said, rising gracefully. Her voice had a musical quality. "You've returned early." "Laika," Ronek greeted her with obvious affection. "I've brought a guest. This is Tristan of Earth." Laika's violet eyes widened slightly as she took in Tristan's disheveled appearance. "Earth? The human world that was destroyed?" Tristan nodded, suddenly very aware of the dirt under his fingernails and the tears in his clothing. "What's left of it, anyway?" A small smile touched Laika's lips. "Well met, Tristan of Earth." "I am Laika Vordath. Tristan will be staying with us." Ronak announced. "I've tasked Merak with arranging accommodations." Merak looked pleased about that, I'm sure, Laika said with a hint of mischief. "As ever," Ronak replied dryly, "I have matters to attend to. Perhaps you could show Tristan the gardens while quarters are prepared." After Ronak departed, an awkward silence fell. Tristan shifted uncomfortably, acutely aware of how out of place he must seem. "You must think this very strange," Laika said finally. "Which part?" Tristan asked. "Being bought from a slave caravan by an alien chief, or being brought to his secret mansion?" Laika laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Both, I suppose. My father rarely acts impulsively. You must have made quite an impression. I just offered him some bread. Sometimes the smallest gestures reveal the most." She gestured to the garden path. "Shall we walk? I imagine you have questions." As they strolled among exotic plants that seemed to respond to their presence, Tristan found Laika surprisingly easy to talk to. She explained that they had been at the estate for nearly a standard year, since the assassination attempt that had forced them into hiding. "The Keldari Empire is fractured," she told him. "My father's progressive policies made him enemies among the traditionalists. They claim he's diluting our culture by opening diplomatic relations with younger species." "Like humans?" "Precisely." She gave him a sidelong glance. "Your people have a reputation for being disruptive to established galactic orders." "Is that a bad thing?" "It depends on whom you ask," Laika replied with another small smile. "My father believes your species has potential. Others find humans unpredictable and dangerous." "And what do you think?" Tristan asked. Laika paused beside a plant with luminous blue flowers. "I think," she said carefully, "that I've never met a human before today, and it would be presumptuous to judge an entire species based on one encounter." "That's diplomatic." "I am a chief's daughter." Her violet eyes met his green ones. "But I'm also curious. Perhaps you could teach me about humans, and I could teach you about Keldari." Before Tristan could respond, Merak appeared at the garden entrance, his expression rigid. "Your quarters are prepared," he announced, pointedly addressing Tristan while ignoring Laika. "If you'll follow me." Tristan glanced at Laika, who gave an almost imperceptible shrug. "Thank you for the garden tour," he said. "Until next time, Tristan of Earth," she replied formally, though her eyes held a warmth that belied her tone. And as he followed Merak stiff back through the corridors, and Tristan realized he was smiling for the first time in months. 7 years later, Tristan's fist connected with the practice dummy, sending it spinning on its axis. Sweat glistened on his now muscular frame as he followed with a combination of strikes that would have incapacitated any living opponent. "Your technique has improved," observed Krell, the gruff Keldari combat instructor who had been training Tristan for the past 7 years. "But you still telegraph your left hook." "Only because you've been watching me throw it for 7 years," Tristan replied with a grin, wiping his brow. At 21, he had grown into his frame, tall, strong, and confident. His once dirt-matted hair was now kept short in the Keldari warrior style, though its golden color remained distinctly human. "Perhaps," Krell conceded with a rare smile. "You've earned your rest today. Chief Vordath will be pleased with your progress." Tristan bowed in the Keldari manner, right fist pressed to left shoulder. What had once felt awkward was now second nature. "Thank you, Master Krell." As Tristan left the training grounds, he reflected on how much had changed. The frightened orphan was gone, replaced by a man who had earned his place in Ronak's household through determination and loyalty. Even Merak had grudgingly come to accept his presence, though the advisor still maintained a professional distance. And then there was Laika. The thought of her quickened his step as he headed toward the gardens, their unofficial meeting place. Over the years, their initial awkwardness had blossomed into a deep friendship. Laika had taught him Keldari language, customs, and history, while he shared stories of Earth and human culture. But lately, something had shifted between them. He found her in their usual spot, beside the luminous blue flowers that had become something of a symbol for their relationship, exotic, beautiful, and unlike anything he'd known before. "Your training ran long today," Laika said without looking up from the ancient text she was studying. Now 23 in standard years, she had grown even more striking. Her silvery hair longer, her violet eyes more knowing. Krell insisted I perfect my defensive forms, Tristan replied, dropping onto the bench beside her. He says I still rely too much on human instinct. And do you? Probably. But human instinct has its advantages. Laika closed her text, finally meeting his eyes. Father says the same. He believes your unpredictability is your greatest strength. High praise from the chief. He sees much in you. Her gaze lingered on his face. As do I. Something in her tone made his heart beat faster. They had been dancing around this tension for months now. Meaningful glances, lingering touches, conversations that seemed to carry double meanings. Laika, he began, uncertain how to proceed. Keldari courtship rituals were complex, and while he'd learned much about their culture, this territory remained uncharted. I've been researching human customs, she said suddenly, a faint purple blush coloring her cheeks. Specifically, how humans express affection. Tristan raised an eyebrow. Have you now? It's purely academic interest, she said, though her eyes suggested otherwise. Your species has such direct approaches. Keldari would spend months in formal courtship before even discussing feelings. And what have you learned about humans? Tristan asked, shifting closer. That you follow your hearts rather than protocols? That you value emotional honesty? Her voice dropped lower. That you express yourselves physically in ways my people consider forward. The air between them seemed to charge with electricity. Tristan was acutely aware of her proximity, the subtle fragrance that was uniquely hers, the way the garden's soft light played across her blue skin. Is that a problem? He asked softly. Not a problem, she replied, a difference. One I find intriguing. Tristan reached out, hesitating only briefly before tucking a strand of silvery hair behind her ear. The simple contact sent a current through them both. In human culture, he said, his voice husky, this would be the moment I'd tell you that you've become the most important person in my world. Laika's violet eyes widened. And in Keldari culture, I would recite the poem of distant stars to indicate reciprocal regard. I'd rather hear what Laika wants to say, not what Keldari tradition dictates. Her hand found his, their fingers intertwining. Blue against tan, alien against human. I want to know what it's like, she whispered. To feel as humans feel. To express as humans express. The moment hung between them, fragile and perfect. Then Tristan leaned forward, closing the distance, and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Laika responded with surprising eagerness. Her skin was cooler than a human's, her touch sending shivers across his senses. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. That was, Laika seemed at a loss for word, perhaps for the first time since he'd known her. Just the beginning, Tristan finished for her. What followed was a discovery of each other, human warmth meeting Keldari grace, two beings from worlds apart finding common ground in the language of touch and whispered affirmations. Their cultural differences created moments of sweet awkwardness and surprising harmony as they explored this new territory together. Later, as they lay entwined on a bed of soft moss beneath the garden's bioluminescent canopy, Laika traced patterns on his chest. Keldari believed that joining with another creates a bond that transcends the physical, she murmured, a sharing of essence that can never be undone. Tristan kissed her forehead gently. Humans have similar beliefs. We call it love. Love, she repeated as if testing the word. Your language has such simple words for complex concepts. Sometimes simple is better. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the gentle sounds of the garden at night. Then Laika propped herself up on one elbow, her expression suddenly serious. This changes things, Tristan. My father may accept you as part of our household, but a relationship between us. The traditionalists would see it as further evidence of his betrayal of Keldari values. I know, Tristan said, the reality of their situation intruding on their moment of connection, but I don't regret it. Nor do I, she said fiercely, but we must be careful. Marak especially would not understand. As if summoned by his name, a distant alarm began to sound. They both sat up, instantly alert. The perimeter breach warning, Leica said, her voice tight with concern. Tristan was already reaching for his clothes. Stay here. I'll find out what's happening. No, she caught his arm. We face this together. Their eyes met in perfect understanding. Whatever was coming, they would confront it as one. Human and Caldari, united by something stronger than either of their cultures could have predicted. Tristan and Leica rushed through the estate's corridors, hastily adjusting their clothing. And the alarm continued to pulse, its rhythmic tone echoing through the halls. It's not the external perimeter, Leica said, her keen ears distinguishing the alarm pattern. It's the inner security grid. Something's happening inside the compound. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with Krell, who was moving with surprising speed for his bulky frame. There you are, the combat instructor growled. The chief has called an emergency council. Both of you are required. What's happening? Tristan asked. Krell's expression darkened. Treachery. The council chamber was in chaos when they arrived. Ronik stood at the center, his commanding presence a calm eye in the storm of agitated advisors and security personnel. His gaze found Tristan and Leica as they entered, a flicker of relief crossing his features. Ah, the final pieces arrive? Came Marek's cold voice from Ronik's right. The senior advisor's pale blue eyes lingered on Tristan with undisguised contempt, then shifted to Leica. Something in his gaze made Tristan's hackles rise. What's the situation? Leica asked, addressing her father directly. Ronik gestured to a holographic display hovering above the central table. We've intercepted communications between someone in this compound and the traditionalist faction. Our location has been compromised. Murmurs rippled through the assembled Caldari. The traditionalists were the most extreme faction opposing Ronik's progressive policies. The same group believed responsible for the assassination attempt that had driven them into hiding. Do we know who sent the transmission? Tristan asked. Not yet, Ronik replied, but the encryption used was administrative level. Only those in this room would have access. The implication hung heavy in the air. Someone present was a traitor. We must evacuate immediately, Marak declared. I've already initiated emergency protocols. Ronik nodded. Agreed. We depart within the hour. Secure only essential items and research. As the council dispersed to prepare, Marak approached Tristan and Leica. Lady Vordath, your father requests you oversee the archival data transfer. His eyes flicked to Tristan. The human will assist me with security measures. Leica hesitated, glancing between them. The tension was palpable. Go, Tristan said softly. I'll find you before departure. After she left, Marak's demeanor shifted instantly. Follow me, he ordered, not bothering to check if Tristan complied. They walked in silence to Marak's private office, a Spartan room dominated by monitors and security feeds. The advisor sealed the door behind them. 7 years, Marak said, his back still to Tristan. 7 years I've watched you integrate yourself into this household, gaining trust, building influence, waiting for your moment. What are you talking about? Marak turned, his face a mask of cold fury. I saw you with her in the garden. Tristan's stomach dropped, but he kept his expression neutral. Is there a problem? A problem? Marek's laugh was brittle. You, a human, defiling the daughter of the Caldari chief. It's an abomination. Leica makes her own choices, Tristan replied evenly, though his pulse quickened. As do I. Choices that conveniently align with human interests. Marak moved to his desk, activating a small device. Did you think I wouldn't investigate your background? The orphan story was convincing, because it was partially true. But you neglected to mention your parents' connections to Earth's military intelligence. Tristan kept his face impassive. My parents died when I was 7. Whatever they did before, that has nothing to do with me. Humans are strategic, Marak continued as if Tristan hadn't spoken. Your species plays the long game. What better way to influence Caldari policy than to place an agent in the chief's household? Even better, in his daughter's bed. You're delusional, Tristan said, but a cold realization was dawning. You sent the transmission to the traditionalists. Marak's thin smile confirmed it. The Caldari Empire stood for 10,000 years before humans emerged from their primitive state. We will not be corrupted by your kind's influence. Ronek will never believe this. Ronek won't have the chance. Marak raised his hand, revealing a neural disruptor. The official record will show that you, the human spy, assassinated him before I could intervene. Tragic, but it will unite the Keldari against the human threat. Tristan tensed, calculating the distance between them. And Laika? Will be consoled in her grief. Eventually, she'll understand the necessity of maintaining pure bloodlines. Something primal and protective surged through Tristan. The thought of Laika in Marak's clutches ignited a fury unlike anything he'd felt before. You know, Tristan said conversationally, shifting his weight slightly, there's something Krell always said about me. Marak's brow furrowed at the non sequitur. What? I telegraphed my left hook. Tristan lunged right, then pivoted with explosive speed, his left fist connecting with Marak's jaw before the advisor could trigger the disruptor. The blow sent Marak staggering back against his desk, the weapon clattering to the floor. Tristan didn't give him time to recover. Years of combat training under Krell had honed his reflexes to razor sharpness. He pressed forward, blocking Marak's desperate counterattack and delivering a precise strike to the advisor's sternum. Marak wheezed, eyes wide with shock. Guards, he gasped. They're busy with evacuation, Tristan said, circling his opponent. It's just you and me. You'll never be accepted, Marak spat. You're an outsider, a human among Keldari. Maybe, Tristan acknowledged, but Ronek saw something in me that day in the plaza. Something you've never understood. What? That humans are generous? Marak sneered, reaching for a hidden blade in his sleeve. Tristan caught his wrist, twisting until the knife fell. That we're willing to give everything we have, even when we have almost nothing, for what we believe in. With a swift movement, Tristan subdued Marak, securing the traitor's hands behind his back with restraints from the security desk. I'm taking you to Ronek, Tristan said, hauling Marak to his feet. He deserves to hear your confession personally. This changes nothing, Marak hissed. The traditionalists are already on their way. The Keldari will never accept human influence. Tristan leaned close. That's where you're wrong. Change is coming to the galaxy, and it starts with understanding between our peoples. He thought of Laika, of the bridge they built between their worlds, and I'll give everything I have to make that happen. As he marched Marak through the corridors toward Ronek's chambers, Tristan's thoughts turned to Laika. Their relationship had just become even more complicated, but also more important than ever. What had begun with a simple offering of bread had evolved into something that might change the course of two civilizations. Ronek's face remained impassive as Tristan presented the bound Marak before him, but his eyes burned with a cold fury. I trusted you above all others, Ronek said to his former advisor. Marak lifted his chin defiantly. I serve the true Keldari way. Your progressive policies will destroy us. By opening dialogue with younger species, by considering that perhaps 10,000 years of isolation has left us stagnant, Ronek shook his head. You've doomed us all with your treachery. A distant explosion rocked the compound, sending vibrations through the floor. They're here, Krell announced, rushing into the chamber. Traditionalist strike force, at least 3 assault vessels. How long until evacuation is complete? Ronek demanded. 20 minutes minimum. The data archives are still transferring. Ronek turned to Tristan. Your assessment? Tristan was momentarily surprised at being consulted during a military crisis, but he quickly gathered his thoughts. They'll expect us to run. Standard Keldari doctrine would be to evacuate high-value personnel immediately while security forces cover the retreat. And what would humans do? Ronek asked, a gleam of interest in his eyes. Something unexpected. Tristan moved to the tactical display. The traditionalists are using Keldari military protocols. I've studied them with Krell. They'll deploy in a standard encirclement pattern, focusing on our hangar base first to prevent escape. Another explosion, closer this time. We don't have the forces to repel them, Krell growled. We don't need to defeat them, just delay them until evacuation is complete, Tristan replied. And we do that by breaking their expectations. He pointed to the compound's environmental systems. What if we trigger the atmospheric purge protocols? Krell's eyes widened. That would flood the outer sectors with paralytic gas meant for decontamination. Exactly. They'll be wearing combat armor, but not environmental seals. They're expecting a firefight, not a chemical attack. Ronick studied the plan, then nodded sharply. Do it. Krell, coordinate with security. Tristan, find Laika and ensure she reaches the primary evacuation vessel. He paused, then added, and Tristan, thank you for your loyalty. As Krell dragged the protesting Merrick away, Ronick stepped closer to Tristan. There's something else we must discuss, but time is short. My daughter, Sir, I dash. Ronick raised a hand. I've known of your feelings for each other for some time. The Keldari way would be to follow formal protocols, arrange proper courtship rituals, seek approval from the Ancestral Council. A rare smile touched his lips. But perhaps it's time for some human directness in our traditions. Before Tristan could respond, the compound's warning system blared again, this time with a different tone. Perimeter breach, Ronick said grimly. Go find Laika. We'll speak more when we're safely away. Tristan sprinted through corridors now filled with Keldari staff rushing to evacuation points. The environmental purge had been activated. Indicator lights showed that the outer sectors were already flooding with the paralytic agent. It would slow the traditionalists, but not stop them. He found Laika in the data archives, supervising the final transfer of cultural and historical records. Tristan! She embraced him fiercely. I heard about Marak. Are you all right? I'm fine, he assured her, but we need to move. The traditionalists have breached the perimeter. A nearby technician looked up from his console. Transfer complete, Lady Vordeth. Good. Get to your evacuation point, Laika ordered. As the technician hurried away, she turned back to Tristan. My father? Heading to the command vessel. He wants us there too. They moved swiftly through the inner corridors, the sounds of battle growing louder. Tristan's plan had bought them time, but the traditionalists were adapting quickly. Tristan, Laika said as they ran, what my father said to you. You know about that? A small smile played at her lips despite the danger. We have a bond. He sought my feelings before approaching you. And what did you tell him? That some traditions are worth preserving, her violet eyes met his, and others are worth evolving. They reached a junction where the corridor split, left toward the main hangar, right toward a secondary bay. Wait, Tristan said, pulling Laika to a stop. Something's wrong. His human instincts, the unpredictability that Krell both praised and criticized, were screaming a warning. The main hangar was too obvious a target. The secondary bay, he decided. They'll focus their forces on the primary evacuation point. Laika didn't question his judgment. They changed course, moving through less crowded passages toward the smaller hangar. Tristan's suspicion proved correct. They encountered no resistance, while the sounds of intense fighting echoed from the direction of the main bay. The secondary hangar contained only a few smaller vessels, most already prepped for departure. Krell was there, surprisingly, directing the loading of essential personnel. The chief ordered a change of plans, the combat instructor explained when he saw them. The human strategy was sound. The traditionalists committed most of their forces to the main hangar, expecting us there. My father, Laika asked anxiously. Already aboard the command shuttle, Krell assured her, pointing to a sleek vessel at the far end of the bay. He awaits you both. As they crossed the hangar floor, a tremendous explosion rocked the entire compound. Emergency force fields activated as sections of the ceiling collapsed. They've brought down the main shield generator, Krell shouted over the alarms. We must depart immediately. They rushed aboard the command shuttle where Ronick was coordinating the evacuation from a tactical console. He looked up as they entered, relief evident in his expression. The human strategy worked, he told them. The paralytic gas disoriented their first wave, and splitting our evacuation points confused their command structure. We've suffered minimal casualties. The shuttle's engines hummed to life as the last essential personnel boarded. Through the force at the viewport, Tristan could see traditionalist forces finally breaking through into the secondary hangar, only to find most of the vessels already launching. As their shuttle lifted off, breaking through the atmosphere into the star-filled blackness of space, Ronick approached Tristan and Laika. We've lost our sanctuary, he said gravely, but not our future. He looked at Tristan with newfound respect. Your human perspective saved many lives today. It's precisely why I've always believed in cooperation between our peoples. Ronik placed a hand on Tristan's shoulder, a gesture of equality rare among the hierarchical Kaldari. When I found you 7 years ago offering me bread when you had nothing, I saw something the traditionalists have forgotten. True strength comes from generosity and adaptation, not rigid adherence to the past. He looked between Tristan and his daughter. The Kaldari Empire needs new blood, new ideas. Perhaps it's time we made that statement more official. Laika's eyes widened. Father, are you suggesting a formal alliance? Rennet confirmed. Between our peoples, beginning with you two. Tristan felt Laika's hand slip into his, her cool blue fingers intertwining with his warm human ones. The traditionalists will be outraged, she said, though her tone suggested this wasn't a rejection of the idea. Let them be, Ronik replied. It's time to show the galaxy that the future belongs to those willing to share their bread, not hoard it. As the shuttle jumped to light speed, carrying them toward an uncertain future, Tristan squeezed Laika's hand. What had begun with a simple act of kindness, a hungry orphan offering his last piece of bread to a stranger, had set in motion events that might reshape galactic politics. And somewhere in that vastness of space, a new chapter awaited them. 6 months later, the ancient ceremonial hall of New Caldaria glittered with bioluminescent decorations that cast prismatic patterns across the gathered assembly. Once a minor outpost, this remote colony had transformed into the headquarters of Ronik's progressive faction, now calling themselves the Reformists. Tristan adjusted the formal Kaldari attire he wore, a blend of traditional designs modified to accommodate human physiology. The deep blue fabric was embroidered with silver patterns that matched Laika's family insignia, marking him as part of the Vordath lineage. Nervous? Asked Krell, who stood beside him as his ceremonial second. Terrified, Tristan admitted with a smile. I've faced traditionalist death squads with less anxiety. Krell chuckled, a sound that had become less rare in recent months. You fought those with your body. Today, you fight with your heart. Poetic for a combat instructor. The Kaldari were poets before we were warriors, Krell replied. Something the traditionalists have forgotten. The massive doors at the end of the hall swung open, and the assembled guests, a mix of Kaldari reformists and a small delegation of humans, rose to their feet. Tristan's breath caught as Laika entered. She wore a gown that seemed to capture starlight itself, flowing around her like liquid silver. Her blue skin glowed with an inner radiance, and her violet eyes found his immediately across the expanse of the hall. Behind her walked Rainik, regal in his ceremonial armor, his bearing every inch that of the chief he had always been. As they approached, Tristan noticed the small object Laika carried, a simple wooden box, unadorned except for a delicate carving of Earth's continents on its lid. His wedding gift to her, containing a small loaf of bread, baked according to an old Earth recipe his mother had taught him before her death. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. Whispers rippled through the assembly. Ronik took his place at the ceremonial altar, Laika standing before him. He gestured for Tristan to join them. Today, Ronik began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. We witnessed not merely the union of two beings, but the symbolic joining of two civilizations, one ancient with the wisdom of 10,000 years, one young with the boundless potential of a species that refuses to surrender. Tristan took Laika's hand, feeling the now familiar coolness of her skin against his warmth. 7 years ago, Ronik continued, a human boy offered me bread when he had nothing else to give. Today, that same human offers my daughter his heart, his loyalty, and his future. He looked at the assembled guests, and in doing so offers all Kaldari a new path forward. The ceremony blended traditions from both cultures. They exchanged vows in both Kaldari and English. They shared symbolic drinks from a ceremonial chalice. And when Laika opened the wooden box, revealing the small loaf of bread, a hush fell over the assembly. She broke it in half, offering a piece to Tristan, just as he had once offered his bread to her father. Take my bread, she said softly, echoing his words from years ago, and with it, my promise to share all I have with you. Tristan accepted it, then offered his half back to her. And I with you. As they completed the ritual, Ronak placed his hands on both their shoulders. What began with an act of generosity now comes full circle. Let it be known throughout the galaxy that the House of Vordath recognizes this union as the first of many bridges between our peoples. The hall erupted in applause. Mostly, Tristan noticed a few Keldari dignitaries who remained stone-faced, clearly uncomfortable with this departure from tradition. But they were outnumbered by those who embraced the symbolic union. The formal reception that followed was a fascinating blend of cultures. Human diplomats attempted Keldari ceremonial dances with varying degrees of success. Keldari officials cautiously sampled Earth cuisine, their expressions ranging from delight to polite horror. Your plan is working, Tristan murmured to Ronak as they stood observing the mingling guests. Our plan, Ronak corrected. Though I admit, when I first saw you in that plaza, I never imagined this outcome. What did you imagine? Ronak's eyes grew distant. I saw a child with nothing, offering everything he had to a stranger. It reminded me of what the Keldari once were, before power and isolation hardened us. He smiled faintly. I thought perhaps you might serve as a reminder of those values. I never anticipated you would become the catalyst for their revival. Across the room, Laika was deep in conversation with the human ambassador, their animated discussion drawing a crowd of interested listeners from both species. She'll make an exceptional diplomat, Ronak observed. She makes an exceptional everything, Tristan replied, unable to keep the pride from his voice. Indeed. Though the path ahead remains challenging, the traditionalists still control significant resources, and not all are as reasonable as Marek. The mention of the former advisor darkened Tristan's mood momentarily. Marek remained in custody, still unrepentant about his betrayal. We'll face them together, Tristan said. Yes. Ronak's expression grew serious. There is something else we must discuss. Intelligence reports suggest the traditionalists are planning something significant. They've been gathering forces at their stronghold on Keldar Prime. An attack? Perhaps, or something more insidious. They've requested a formal audience with the Ancestral Council, the first time in decades. Before Tristan could respond, Laika appeared at his side, slipping her arm through his. Discussing politics at a wedding celebration, Father. Even for Keldari, that's poor form. Ronak inclined his head in acknowledgement. My apologies, daughter. The matters of state can wait until tomorrow. As Ronak moved away to greet other guests, Laika led Tristan toward a quiet alcove, away from the main celebration. Happy? He asked, drawing her close. Beyond word, she replied, her violet eyes luminous, though I find myself impatient for the ceremonial obligations to end. Oh, Tristan raised an eyebrow. And why is that? Her smile held a hint of mischief. Because while I find these formal Keldari robes quite striking on you, I'm rather looking forward to seeing you without them. Tristan laughed, the sound drawing curious glances from nearby Keldari, who were unaccustomed to such open displays of emotion. I've created a scandal again, haven't I? You've been creating scandals since the day you offered my father bread, Laika replied, pressing closer. It's one of the many things I love about humans. You're wonderfully, refreshingly direct. Their moment of intimacy was interrupted by a commotion at the hall's entrance. A Keldari messenger rushed in, making directly for Ronak. The chief's expression darkened as he received the news. Something's wrong, Laika said, instantly alert. They crossed the hall quickly. Ronak turned to them, his face grim. The traditionalists have made their move, he said quietly. They've declared me unfit to lead and have called for a succession challenge. They can't do that without the Ancestral Council's approval, Laika protested. They claim to have it. Ronak's eyes met Tristan's. And they've named you specifically in their declaration as evidence of my corruption by human influence. Tristan felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. What does this mean? It means, Ronak said heavily, that our honeymoon must wait. We depart for Keldar Prime immediately. The challenge must be answered in person, or we forfeit all claim to leadership. As the celebration rapidly transformed into preparations for departure, Tristan pulled Laika aside once more. "I'm sorry," he said. "This is because of me." She placed her hand against his cheek. "No, this was inevitable. The traditionalists would have found another excuse if not this one." Her expression grew determined. "Besides, they've made a critical error." "What's that?" "They've underestimated humans." Her violet eyes flashed with fierce pride. "A mistake my father and I would never make." As they prepared to face this new threat, Tristan reflected on how far he had come from that hungry orphan offering his last piece of bread. Now he stood ready to fight for a future where humans and Caldari could share the galaxy, and perhaps in doing so, create something greater than either could achieve alone. Keldar Prime loomed before them, its ancient spires reaching toward the stars like accusing fingers. Once the jewel of the Caldari Empire, the ancestral homeworld now served as the traditionalists' stronghold, and potentially, Tristan realized, their tomb. "The Ancestral Council has granted us safe passage," Ronix said as their diplomatic vessel entered the planet's atmosphere. "For whatever that's worth." "You don't trust them," Tristan observed. "I trust the Council to follow protocol. I do not trust Warden Draven to honor it." Ronix's expression darkened. He was Marek's mentor, and far more dangerous. Laika squeezed Tristan's hand. Since their interrupted wedding ceremony, they'd had precious little time alone, but each stolen moment had been a treasure, whispered promises and tender touches that sustained them through the tension of their journey. "Remember," she whispered now, "whatever happens, we face it together." The landing platform extended from the Great Citadel, an imposing structure of gleaming metal and stone that had stood for millennia. An honor guard awaited them, their ceremonial armor polished to mirror brightness, their expressions carefully neutral. "Showtime," Tristan murmured. They disembarked with deliberate dignity. Ronix first, then Laika and Tristan, followed by Krell and a small contingent of loyal reformists. The formal procession into the Citadel felt more like a funeral march than a diplomatic reception. The Ancestral Council chamber was a vast circular room dominated by 13 ornate chairs arranged in a semicircle. 11 were occupied by ancient Caldari, their skin faded to pale blue with age, their eyes holding the wisdom and weariness of centuries. Before them stood Warden Draven, tall even for a Caldari, with facial markings more elaborate than Marak's had been, signifying his high birth. His cold gaze fixed on Tristan with undisguised contempt. "Chief Ronek Vordath," intoned the Central Council member, "you stand accused of betraying Caldari traditions and endangering our species through unsanctioned alliance with humans. How do you answer?" "I answer that adaptation is our oldest tradition," Ronek replied evenly, "and that isolation has become our greatest danger." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "And this," Draven interrupted, gesturing dismissively toward Tristan, "is your evidence? A single human who has seduced your daughter and clouded your judgment?" Tristan felt Laika tense beside him, but maintained his composure. He'd anticipated this line of attack. "Warden Draven," Ronix said, "I present Tristan of Earth not as evidence, but as living proof that cooperation between our peoples benefits both. His human perspective has saved Caldari lives multiple times." "A convenient claim," Draven sneered. "Perhaps the Council would prefer to hear from the human directly. Let him speak for himself, if he can comprehend our proceedings." The challenge was clear. Tristan stepped forward, bowing to the Council with perfect Caldari etiquette. "Honored ancestors," he began, in flawless Caldari, earning surprised looks from several Council members. "I stand before you as both outsider and family. 7 years ago, I offered Chief Vordath my last piece of bread, not knowing who he was, only that he appeared in need. He in turn offered me a home when I had none." "Pretty words," Draven interrupted, "but they change nothing. The Caldari have survived for 10,000 years by maintaining our purity and traditions." "Survived, yes," Tristan countered, "but at what cost? Your population declines, so your innovations stagnate. While younger species explore the galaxy, the Caldari cling to past glories." Draven's face contorted with rage. "Enough! This human dares lecture us on our own history?" This human, Ronik interjected, speaks truth that many Kaldari have forgotten. The tension in the chamber was palpable. Tristan noticed subtle movements among Draven's honor guard, positions shifting, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. His combat training with Krell had taught him to recognize the signs of imminent attack. He caught Laika's eye, a silent warning passing between them. She had noticed too. "Honored Council," Draven said, his voice suddenly smooth, "perhaps a recess is in order. Allow us to prepare proper accommodations for our distinguished guest." The Central Council member nodded. "We shall reconvene tomorrow. Chief Vordath, you and your party will be escorted to the diplomatic quarters." As the council members filed out, Draven approached them, flanked by his guards. "A word of advice," he said quietly to Ronik. "Send the human away. Renounce this misguided alliance. It's not too late to salvage your legacy." "My legacy," Ronik replied, "will be determined by my actions, not your judgment of them." Draven's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We shall see." As they were escorted through the Citadel's labyrinthine corridors, Tristan maintained vigilant awareness of their surroundings. The diplomatic quarters were luxurious but clearly designed for containment rather than comfort. A gilded cage. "It's a trap," Krell stated bluntly once they were alone. Draven never intended to honor the challenge protocols. "Agreed," Ronik said. "The question is when they'll move against us." "Tonight," Tristan said with certainty. "They can't risk the full council hearing more of our arguments." Some seemed receptive. Laika moved to the window, gazing out at the ancient city below. "There's something else. Did you notice the civilians in the lower levels as we arrived? They looked afraid," Tristan finished for her, "not of us, of their own leaders." A plan began forming in his mind. Risky, potentially suicidal, but with a slim chance of success. "Krell, what lies beneath the Citadel?" "The old catacombs," the combat instructor replied, "and beyond them, the civilian districts." "In the Citadel's security systems?" "Centralized in the command nexus, 3 levels down." Tristan nodded. "I have an idea." Hours later, as Keldar Prime's twin moons rose above the horizon, the trap was sprung, but not as Draven had planned. When his assassins breached the diplomatic quarters, they found it empty. Alarms blared throughout the Citadel as Tristan, Laika, Rannick, and Krell moved through maintenance passages that Krell had memorized decades earlier during his service in the Imperial Guard. They reached the command nexus just as Draven's voice echoed through the facility-wide communication system. "All security forces, the traitors, have escaped. Lock down all sectors. Shoot on sight." "Charming hospitality," Tristan muttered as Krell disabled the guards at the Nexus entrance. Inside, Tristan worked quickly, his human adaptability allowing him to improvise with the unfamiliar Keldari systems. "There," he said finally. "I've overridden the emergency protocols. Instead of locking down, all civilian sectors are being evacuated to the safety zones." "Why?" Laika asked. "Because in about 3 minutes, the Citadel's internal sensors will detect what they believe is a catastrophic reactor breach." Tristan's fingers flew across the control panel. "The safety systems will prioritize civilian lives over security protocols." Understanding dawned on Ronik's face. "The traditionalists will be forced to choose between capturing us and saving their own people." "Exactly," Tristan confirmed, "and I'm betting on their better nature." The false alarm triggered chaos throughout the Citadel. As predicted, Draven's forces diverted to civilian evacuation. Kaldari cultural values ran too deep to abandon their people, even for political gain. In the confusion, Tristan led their small group to the Ancestral Council's private chamber, where the elders had gathered in emergency session. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded the Central Council member as they entered. "Forgiveness, honored ancestors," Ronik said, bowing deeply, "but Warden Draven planned to assassinate us tonight, violating your guaranteed safe passage." "A serious accusation," one elder replied. "What proof do you offer?" In answer, Tristan activated a holographic display showing Draven's security forces preparing to breach their quarters. "This proves nothing," another council member argued. "Perhaps they feared you were escaping." Then explain this, Tristan said, revealing intercepted communications between Draven and his commanders, explicitly ordering their elimination. The council fell silent, their ancient faces troubled. Even now, Tristan continued, Draven's forces are evacuating civilians from a non-existent reactor breach. We created that false alarm, not to cause panic, but to save lives. We could have escaped during the chaos, but instead we came to you. Why? Asked the eldest council member. Because, Ronik answered, despite our differences, we believe in the true Kildari way, honor, wisdom, and adaptation, the same values that led me to accept bread from a human child 7 years ago. The chamber doors burst open as Draven entered, flanked by armed guards. Seize them, he commanded. Stand down, Warden, ordered the Central Council member. They've compromised our security systems. They dash. They exposed your treachery, the elder interrupted, and demonstrated something you have forgotten, that the protection of all Kildari, even those who oppose you politically, takes precedence over personal ambition. Draven's face contorted with rage. You're siding with them? With a human? We are siding with Kildari values, the council member replied. The same values this human demonstrated when, as a starving child, he offered his last food to a stranger. In that moment, the balance shifted. Draven's own guards looked uncertain, their weapons lowering slightly. The succession challenge is resolved, declared the council as one. Ronik Vordath remains chief of the Kildari, with all rights and authorities thereof. And the human influence? Draven demanded desperately. The eldest council member fixed Tristan with an appraising gaze. Perhaps some influences are worth embracing? A hint of a smile touched the ancient face, especially when they remind us of who we truly are. 1 year later, Tristan stood on the balcony of their new home on Keldar Prime, watching the sunset paint the ancient city in hues of gold and purple. Behind him, Laika approached, slipping her arms around his waist. Contemplating your unexpected career as a diplomat? She asked, resting her head against his shoulder. Tristan smiled, contemplating how a piece of bread changed the course of galactic history. The past year had seen remarkable changes. With the traditionalists discredited, Ronik's reformist policies had gained widespread acceptance. The first formal alliance between humans and Kildari had been signed, opening trade routes and cultural exchanges that benefited both species. My father says the human delegation arrives tomorrow, Laika murmured. They're bringing something special for you. Oh, apparently Earth's oldest bakery has created a commemorative loaf in your honor. They're calling it the Peacemaker. Tristan laughed. Ridiculous. Is it? Laika turned him to face her, her violet eyes serious. You offered bread to a stranger, and it led to peace between our peoples. Some might call that destiny. I call it being hungry and decent, Tristan replied, drawing her closer. Though I admit I got the better end of the bargain. Her cool lips met his warm ones in a kiss that still sent electricity through him. Even after all they'd shared, their physical connection had only deepened with time, the initial awkwardness of their different physiologies giving way to a harmony that reflected their emotional bond. We both did, Laika whispered against his lips. And soon there will be 3 of us to share the bounty. Tristan pulled back slightly, his eyes questioning. Laika took his hand and placed it gently against her abdomen. The medical council confirmed it this morning. The genetic modifications were successful. Joy unlike anything Tristan had ever known flooded through him. What had once been deemed impossible, a child of both human and Kildari heritage, would soon become reality. A living symbol of our union, he said softly, and proof that sharing bread can lead to sharing life itself, Laika replied. As the twin moons of Keldar Prime rose above the horizon, Tristan reflected on the journey that had brought him here, from a starving orphan to the architect of interspecies peace. All because, in a moment of simple human decency, he had said 6 words that changed everything. You can have my bread,